How strong is Loki? It's a random question, but we haven't made a video about Loki in a while, so at first glance you might not think much of Loki's ability to do anything in a straight-up brawl, or at least a brawl to the death. After all, this is a man behind such exploits as betting his head that dwarves couldn't make gifts as great as the ones that they came up originally to replace Sif's hair, or along with Sif's new hair, only to then later realize how stupid of a gamble this was, and then, in true Loki fashion, troll them into not making good things by, turning into a fly and upsetting these dwarves, only to then fail at that, and then, when the dwarves come along to cut off his head, he point out that, well, he didn't offer them his neck, only his head, so they sew up his mouth so that he can't speak anymore, but he's still alive. Or that time when he was blamed for a giant almost completing Asgard's wall because the gods were too lazy to build a wall themselves, and so they hired some random giant they didn't know all that much about, and they didn't know he was a giant. He was of course in disguise, but you get the point here. And so the gods had to more or less coerce him into finding a solution to the problem. Also, some giant couldn't, take Freya, shall we say. This solution involved Loki getting taken by another horse. Or the whole situation with Idun's apples, in which a simple prank led to him fearing the gods and running from giants. So whilst these things don't make Loki sound like the manliest of men, he had his pride. Believe it or not, the little cuck that can actually 100-0 mages as they're nothing, and do all of that whilst playing fairly cowardly, is actually pretty brave. I'm not just referring to the tug-of-war he had with a goat, but when Loki went to the home of giants, he entered a contest, an eating contest against Loki, and lost, but only because Loki ate bones of all the animals that they were eating and the things that they were served on, so Loki was a bit extreme, and Loki didn't prepare himself for those rules. But Loki wasn't pleased about losing, of course. Loki really didn't necessarily have to enter the contest, but hey, he needed a place to stay for the night. He and Thor and the rest of them needed a place to stay, so yeah, he did it for that reason, and maybe pride as well. He may have also actually been mad at the fact that Utgard Loki out-Loki'd him, but either way, my point is that he's upset that in some way or another his sort of look or pride was damaged in some way, and he cared about that. So, whilst he might not be as boastful as some of the other Norse characters, he still has an element of that in him. When he came to fight Heimdall in a fairish fight to the death, they slew each other, true, but you have to remember that Heimdall was charged with guarding the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge leading to the realm of the gods, Asgard itself. And the gods wouldn't choose any random chump to do that job. They'd obviously get someone who was significantly skilled because, of course, he's guarding the home of the gods themselves, so you'd need to be pretty distinguished and pretty skilled to do that, right? I would think. So, Heimdall's most likely no joke. I say that because we don't actually have much of Heimdall in action in actual Norse mythology, so it's probably going to make my next point a bit shaky, but work with me here. They also both survived to the latter stages of Ragnarok, which means they most likely both would have been fighting and doing quite active things for quite a while before actually getting to fight each other. So, I would think you'd need a decent amount of skill to survive a normal battle, so much, much more times a billion perhaps, or whatever the multiplier is for Ragnarok, the end days, the greatest battle in Norse mythology. I mean, come on, you've got giant wolves, the godliest characters in Norse mythology, the frost giants, all types of other types of giants running around, the chosen dead warriors that survived to go on to Valhalla or at Odin's side, and other sorts of dangerous creatures and monsters running around in Ragnarok. And the world is ending in and of itself, so that's dangerous just alone. So, yeah, props to Loki for that. He's definitely got that much skill. You gotta give him that much credit. And his stamina really isn't that shabby as well, at least. But I suppose you could figure that from how much running he's done in the myths. And you're probably going to bring up the fact that he does those alternatives to fighting in situations where he probably could try to fight his way out of his problems, especially if he is skilled enough to survive so long during Ragnarok, killing Asgardians and Heimdall, though of course dying to Heimdall. But see, the thing is, Loki's greatest strength lies in how unpredictable he is. Look through Norse mythology and tell me how many fights Loki has actually been in, and actual one-on-one or multi-fights? Not many. The answer is not many at all. And you probably think that he's incapable of going toe-to-toe with giants, gods, and the rest of them, and that's only partially true. Sure, he's probably not going to be able to match Thor's strength, especially not while he's got Mjolnir, but that doesn't mean Loki is a slouch in a fight like that. He clearly isn't. Because however skilled Loki might be, I find it pretty difficult to think that during Ragnarok he'd just be able to hide and just avoid fighting completely, or, just constantly be able to stab Asgardians in the back during the fight and not have at least some sort of real confrontation with some of them. And also it's not too far-fetched to think that a lot of Asgardians would have underestimated Loki because he became a laughingstock, which was part of the reason why he even left the gods to go live with Angerboda and have his free monstrous children in the first place, just because the gods couldn't drop the whole horse thing. Seriously though, when was the last time you thought about Loki and then thought to yourself, this guy's scary as fuck? Pretty sure that those thoughts have never crossed your mind, really. Now, Smite Loki is a bit different. Sure, he's got Anubis blamed for a murder he didn't commit, but he also didn't plan for what might happen if someone didn't believe the dog was guilty, and he got an arrow in the lower part of his leg. Sure, he managed to beat Zeus, but that was with the help of some other gods, and, he teamed up to do that. And when the gods actually teamed up against him, he lost quite badly. That's not to say that he isn't a problem. To reiterate, he killed Zeus, and Zeus is a big boy. Even if Zeus was teamed up on, Zeus is still a pretty big boy. It's just Loki, when compared to the other gods from other pantheons and mythology, really isn't that strong. You take out a lot of the gods of strength and a lot of the more OP gods that have got so many abilities that it's really unfair, and even still, Loki is slightly outmatched. But if he can kill Zeus, he could probably find a way to kill almost anyone in Smite, I guess. Then again, I suppose when you really think about it, Smite's Loki in the story was actually extremely unpredictable, because he killed Zeus, and most people that would kill that sort of person in a high position of power and take something that would make them extremely more powerful would probably have another agenda or motive than just having a bit of fun. Because that's essentially what Loki did with the Master Bolt. He just had a bit of what he would call fun. And only the gods know what else he actually did with the Master Bolt. But you wouldn't expect someone to just go around and doing that for a bit and not really do too much. And really, when you consider Zeus' position, the power that he held, if Loki felt like he actually needed to take that to have his fun, and then he didn't try to rule anything or take over any significant plot of land or take away worshippers or any of that sort of thing. He literally just wanted to cause a bit of havoc, maybe, murder a few people for fun, and then eventually he got caught and that was that. But the point is, I suppose Loki really is pretty unpredictable in Smite, as far as the story is concerned. We're going to skip the outro for this one, where I usually ask you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can do that, by the way, if you want. And we're just going to end it here. So, until the next one, very good day. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in a few. Bye-bye.